Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today, we get to speak not with a homeopath, somebody a little bit different, the lovely Annie Williams. Welcome to the show, Annie.
Thank you so much, Eugenie. Thank you.
It's lovely to have you on. The gorgeous Eileen Noman has put the two of us in touch with each other. Now, you do like resonance frequency type medicine, but of a different sort, which I'm really excited for us to go into today. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because you're actually a harpist and a singer and songwriter, and I found your music on Spotify as well. I was really excited. But you do something more to do with using sound medicine. So maybe take us on a bit of
Right,
a
right.
journey and just tell us how you came to do what it is that you're doing now.
Okay, well, I started playing music when I was 15, and then someone gave me a harp in, I think, 1969. And I didn't know what to do with this thing, but I started just playing it and making up songs. And I had several very strong guidances from dreams and from intuitive input that I really needed to get on with the music, that I had a job to do here on the planet. So I started playing the harp and recording actually quite early on, 1980s. And I began to travel a lot with the harp and meeting with indigenous cultures and participating in their rituals, in their traditions. And I noticed how much they incorporated music to create a state of unity. And often they would also incorporate dance and particular dance, creating geometries even with the patterns of their feet, like the Aztec people do. So I learned a lot from these ancient cultures about the importance of sound and rhythm and how it changes our state of consciousness, how it can create an altered state in a group of people. And so I began to explore more the therapeutic end of sound and found a couple of really excellent teachers, Fabio Mamon, Sherry Edwards, and many others. But mainly Sherry Edwards was the one in 1992 that brought forth a system of voice diagnostics. And it's an amazing system that we can find the roots in ancient Egypt and the Sufi traditions, wherein the voice tells a story and the patterns in just our speaking voices give us information about our state of our physical, mental, emotional, and the state of the soul. It's like a barometer. So one thing led to another. It was a very organic evolution. And I found that I really needed confidence in what I was doing. I wanted to really 100% believe in everything that I was beginning to practice. So it's been a 30-year journey of studying various scientific discoveries that back up what we're finding with people's voices. And I discovered that it relates to homeopathy in an interesting way, that the emotions carry a frequency. Our state of being is a frequency, and we transmit that in simple sounds like ah, or if we sigh, if we're in ecstasy about something, ah, or worried about something. Those sounds transmit a particular frequency and make a connection between the sound, expression, and the inner emotion. So we discovered that the same frequency relates to an emotional issue or a physical issue, that the remedy is the same frequency. So the issue, it's like arsenic. If you have some food poisoning, eat something that's a little bit off. You don't want to take arsenic, but that principle, I could call it sonopathy, giving the same frequency to release the issue. And I don't know if that's too complicated that I've given in a big mouthful, Do you?
No, no, that's beautiful. That's given us a nice teaser, I should say, of what we can expect to hear from you. So I think you've actually summed up something quite large in quite a nice little sound bite. So thank you for that. Can you tell a bit more about the voice? Because that's fascinated me. When you
Yeah,
said that, I
yeah,
just suddenly remembered a friend of mine sending me a Facebook message with some information on that. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, but I didn't investigate it further. But
yeah.
this idea that the tone of our voice can tell us what is up with somebody. And I've heard of people doing therapies around that and how your voice can actually change as certain traumas and things are released. So you're going to
Yeah.
have to tell us a bit more about that side of thing. That's so fascinating.
Yes, that was a good lead in because the things that we experience in life affect our voice. For instance, if we have a traumatic experience in childhood and our confidence is totally shut down for one reason or another, that influences the voice's expression. And what we want to hear in a voice, ideally, and this is the goal, is the full expression, like a symphony of all the instruments playing all of the beautiful tones. But it's fascinating that most people are missing half of the musical notes in the scale, a possible scale of 12 tones in the Western musical scale. Most people are missing half of those. And most people I've found are actually missing the frequency that relates to their sun sign. So when we're born, if you can imagine, the heavens are arranged in a particular pattern. And the sun's over here in Leo now, and the moon's in Cancer, and Mercury's here, and all of the planets are in various positions and constellations. Well, in the system I use, each constellation of the zodiac has a specific major frequency. And it's interesting because science has verified that every planet is singing. You can reduce the frequency or raise the frequency to the hearing level and hear the Earth or any of the planets singing. And they're actually, astrophysicists are able to learn about the composition and the activity of a planetary body or a star. Just like we are able, when we analyze the voice, it's also called voice diagnostics, we're able to find what's going on. For instance, if the person was born in the sign of Libra, that would be an F sharp. And if that tone is missing in their voice, there can be, not necessarily, but there's a possibility for issues with the kidney, bladder, and so we can look at those things and ask the client if they indeed have any issues or kidney stones or if they drink enough water, even simple things. The voice, it's called voice analysis, voice spectrum analysis, and also voice diagnostics. And it's being used now. This whole thing was really fringe when it came out in the early 90s. But the system that was developed by Sherry Edwards was developed with some various scientists and working within the University of, I believe it was Ohio, and finding verification for the power of the voice when we can discover the notes that are missing or stressed from various effects, then putting those sounds back in totally turns around the issue. It can totally turn around an emotional blockage, a creativity blockage, or it can affect the thyroid. If we get the right tone for the thyroid, I had a woman whose thyroid and totally balanced and the basal temperature went back up. Worked with autistic children, neurodevelopmental children and babies that are helped by just the very simply the application that I developed, because there are many ways to work with this. You can just sound a tuning fork and bring in the right frequency, or you can pluck a string on the harp, or make, better yet, the most important instrument in the world. The only living instrument is the human voice. So that's actually the most important way to bring in a sound. So we can heal with those sounds when we find the right sound. So voice diagnostics is being used on the corporate level by banking systems, because by identifying the voice signature, we're able to verify who the person is, what some of their qualities for hiring might be, what their personality is. They're using it in medicine. I'm working with it in a one-on-one. I'm actually training people how to do this because I've been doing this for 30 years and it's time to pass the torch. But they're using it in medicine in a very specific way with machines to analyze the voice pattern and then pick out specific frequencies and even relate those frequencies to gene activity. For instance, with COVID, when COVID came out, they were able to use voice diagnostics to learn exactly what variety of the virus was in the body, whether it was manifesting or not. If it was COVID, blah, 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 000, whatever. And it's amazing. The future of medicine, the future of science, of sound is extraordinary. I mean, we could go on forever with this because we can get into archaeoacoustics and the sound of ancient sites and what that tells us. And it's just an amazing field.
Holy moly. I think you've just blown my mind completely open. That is so cool. Firstly, I have never heard of the planets having sounds as well, but that does make complete sense. I have seen these things where they tap into like mushrooms and plants and trees, and then they can actually play the sounds that is, or the frequency that that's emitting, and play the sound that relates to that frequency. So it does make sense what you're saying, of course. And there is so much more information these days coming out. It's so mainstream these days that everything is frequency. And so what you're saying is actually, it makes complete sense on a level, which is great as well. I am interested to know, how are you diagnosing this? So does somebody speak into a device and then you get
Yeah.
a printout? Oh, okay.
Well, there are many different varieties of voice diagnostics and voice analysis. And the way I was trained was using a computer program, and all of the notes come up on a graph, and then you have to know how to translate that information. And it's quite complex. I actually use a piano tuner, a very good quality piano tuner and a microphone. And I do it by hand. For instance, if the person's talking, I work on Zoom. I used to do it in person, but no more. And I have the microphone hooked up to the computer. And as the person's speaking, I'm writing down the notes that they're speaking. But what's interesting, in using it in a manual way instead of a computer generated way, I'm able to connect specific emotional issues, specific physical issues with the specific frequencies and the octaves that they arise in. Then we have a more detailed, a more intimate view into a person's story, their history. And then we can take the notes. And then, of course, I do the medical astrology, as Eileen Nauman does so beautifully. I learned from her and my
Okay.
dear friend, Rosemary Brown, who you may also know that has worked with Eileen. And I do a planetary chart from the moment of birth before I see the client, because this gives a whole spectrum of frequencies that the planets are dancing in for that person. And then doing the voice analysis, there is a mirroring. The two charts mirror each other. It's extraordinary, really. I keep going, wow, in doing this work. over so many years. It's just, how can that be so amazingly perfect that that pattern, that blueprint at the moment of birth, it's not set in stone. It's not a fate at all, because the whole idea is to work with all of the information and then change it and bring integration of all those notes that have to do with stress or any kind of inhibitions or mistaken identities or illnesses, chronic, whatever, and bring in those frequencies so that there's wholeness, so that there's the complete symphony singing, so that each person has full potential to manifest who they truly are and what they're here to do on the planet.
Wow. So I have a couple of questions for you. From what age can you do this diagnostic?
Yeah, that's a good question because I've worked with babies and tiny children, but in that way, I can only do the chart and then use the application of the sound, working with the chart to define where the greatest stress is. And for instance, with one little autistic boy, he was missing a real key frequency where the greatest stress was in his chart. I think it was to the moon and Mars and all of these things jamming up there. And so we just used the frequencies for him. But what was interesting is that his parents got him a musical instrument and he started playing he gravitated to the tones that he was missing naturally. So this is something that when we just make a sound like a sigh, I think we started talking about that. A simple sigh. That can indicate a frequency that is very important for us. So just getting a young person to express, and by putting on the application of sound, which I developed, which is a recording of layered instruments using harp, and these are each keyed in particular frequencies. So for instance, the D as in darling tone would have harp in the key of D, didgeridoo in D, Tibetan bowls in D, harmonic vocals, mantra, and all of them come together in this sound wash of a particular frequency. So that can be put on for the child or the baby, or even a person who is in a coma or anything, and they can hear that beautiful sound. And it's not going to hurt them if we have the wrong frequency, because it's just a wash of beautiful harmonic instruments. That's another interesting point about this work, because in voice diagnostics and voice analysis and in medical applications, they're using very high-tech, ultra-specific frequencies, often in the low inaudible range or higher ranges. And if you get the wrong frequency, you can actually do harm. There are examples of that happening. So that's why I wanted to be careful and just create an organic system of application using instruments that have been used throughout history for healing. So if you hear, you might even not have the right tone, but if you hear it, you're going to think, oh, that's really hypnotic or beautiful. And anyway, we can work with very young people. It's, of course, better if the person is vocalizing. I have a new client coming up who had a stroke recently. Luckily, she can still vocalize. So we'll be able to get the voice analysis as well as the medical astrology and the chart.
Mm.
But I just wanted to add something for any skeptics out there about planets singing and stars singing and all this far out stuff. Actually, the Voyager series, I was giving a workshop in Phoenix, Arizona years ago, and I had no idea that one of the men had developed the technology in the Voyager, what was it, the satellite or whatever it was, that was picking up the exact frequencies of celestial bodies. And I think it was mainly the planets that the Voyager series focused on. And you can actually go on the NASA website and hear the different songs of the planets. It's there for anyone to hear.
That is very cool. When you were talking about using it for children, I just couldn't help but think about the applications in school classrooms as well. Wouldn't that just be so
Hmm.
beautiful? But then also, isn't it interesting with, I work a lot with children with autism, and the speech is often very monotonous. So it is quite interesting. I can see how there would be a particular application for that subset of the population. One, that is one of the symptoms quite often, is that the speech is very monotonous. Maybe
Yeah.
wonder as well, is it always that if you've got something missing from your range, that it would be necessarily from this lifetime, or could it be from past lifetimes as well?
Really excellent question. I believe that it can be from other lifetimes, an accumulated patterning in the soul. And there was a Pomo grandmother from an indigenous woman from California. And she said long ago that when we die, what we take with us is our sound signature. And I
Mm.
found that very interesting. So, if we indeed bring with us in our soul patterning the memory of what we've accumulated, good and bad, so called, then that patterning will come out in the voice. And it's a pattern that we believe is in the brain, in its activity, and it's in the tissues, in the bones, that these patterns of sound are in every part of us and in the gene activity, as I mentioned. So when we start working with the sound pattern of a person and then bring in the missing tones, and as I said, there can be 6 notes missing, sometimes more. And the more monotonous or monotone the voice is, then the more notes are missing. What happens when the notes are brought back in, this stimulates the brain and all of the body, the tissues, the awareness, the psyche, and the energy field to start recognizing that frequency that shut down, that frequency that was related to some sort of stress or trauma or memory.
Amazing. I'm also interested to know how they figured out which loss of frequency relates to which issues. Do you know how that came about?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not sure I can answer that because when I was trained by Sherry Edwards, she did 25 years of research and working with a hearing specialist doctor. And they put together a series of charts that, for instance, the note C would relate to skin issues, large muscles, sometimes the blood, systemic things like viruses, candida, bacterial. Anyway, each tone has a specific range of issues that can occur when those frequencies are missing. There are also lists of emotional issues. So, for instance, if the note C is in Charlie is missing, it can relate to the root chakra and the foundation issues for a person like finances, survival, sexuality, being in control of your life, being able to manifest those root foundation issues. And so I found that if women are missing the notes C and C sharp, which are the foundation, the root, then often there's more difficulty in manifesting what their wishes are, what they're really here to do, their empowerment.
Wow, and I can see how that, if you knew somebody's natal chart as well, and you can see if that tends to also be what their issue is in this lifetime combined with the voice analysis,
Exactly.
would be really powerful. And as a
Yeah.
homeopath, we're always trying to look for different ways that we can get into a case, because not all
Yeah.
clients come to us with an open book. Quite often we have to do quite a lot of work to find out what the real issue is and what is it that
Yeah.
they're hiding. And very often they're not even aware of what the real issue is either. They might have seen lots of
Right.
therapists and thought they dealt with a thing that is actually really still causing them trouble. So anything like this, like an astrological chart or this sort of scanning the voice, anything like this that you can then give a person, print out and go, these are some of the possible issues, and they can go, oh, actually, I didn't mention this.
Yeah.
So anything that can
Yeah.
help me get an in a case, my ears always
Yeah.
perk up. So
Yes.
really like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to touch on, and that was you said when some medical professionals use frequencies that we might not be able to hear, and that you're a little bit careful. You'd rather use the musical instruments themselves that have shown to have healing frequencies. And that's as frequency medicine is becoming such a buzzword, and there's all these frequency healing devices that are out there these days. I'm in such two minds about them because I don't know what is the frequency that they're
Yeah.
zapping into me and what really is it doing
Yeah.
to my own
Yeah.
energetic field. So I have one
Yeah.
sitting there, but I haven't used it yet because it just, I don't know. There's so many people getting great results with it, but just intuitively, there's something that
Yeah.
maybe worries me a little bit about it. Whereas with music, I feel I've played the piano since I was a little girl. So there's something about music that really resonates with me. But when
Yeah.
it comes to something
Yeah.
something is zapping in me and I don't know what it is, I'm a little bit skeptical about that. But then also
Yeah.
there are frequency and heal, like these types of devices that do a lot of good as well. So I'm not.
So, yeah, it's a really good point. And in medicine, when they apply a frequency, they're doing so much research, careful research, testing the blood response, the oxygenation response. The things are not just given randomly. And it's Pandora's box opened up with this whole sound knowledge, and everybody's developing various things. And I have tried some that I loved and some that I didn't have a good response from. So I think trusting the natural sounds, unless you're a real scientist that is doing the research, trusting the natural frequencies of tuning forks, instruments, but most importantly, the human voice. Our own human voice is the greatest instrument, and it is the most powerful instrument that can be used for healing. So if, for instance, we find out a person needs the tone D or G or whatever, then they just tone that tone. And that's one thing I didn't mention or make clear, because the application I developed is only a guide for the person to bring in their own voice. And I'm sure there are a lot of devices out there that are magical and wonderful. It's just that I'm with you. I don't trust all of them, and I don't know all of the research that was done behind. There's a interesting man I've recently befriended, John Stewart Reed, and he's an acoustical scientist and really he has done so much research in cymatics, and he's developed machines that can do really refined cymatics research. And cymatics is simply discovering the pattern that sound creates, sound and matter, and what forms emerge. Dr. Emoto did a lot of that. So anyway, John's research in the power of the human voice, it creates effects in the body that create immune boosters automatically, creates infrared light, just humming, using our voices to hum. And we can go for an infrared light session, but why not just sing and create that ourselves? So that's really the key to the healing of this system. And I should say that I'm really not wanting to get busier with clients, but I'm training people how to do this. And I have an online course that I developed, and it's very comprehensive. I used to teach courses around the world, and I'm getting beyond retirement age. And my goal is to just pass the torch and train more people and get this incredible sound science out there and have it used. Like your work with autistic children, magnificent. What can happen with homeopathy, with sound, with all of these modalities to totally shift a
Mm.
person's life.
I think that's why this type of sound healing, I really get excited about because of the non-invasive mass application that you can do. And when I spoke with Harry van der Zee on the podcast as well, they transmit homeopathic remedy via music in Africa and are able to heal children from malaria and all sorts of things. So I
Beautiful.
really like the mass application of that because our world is just in such a toxic state that anything that we
Yeah.
can transmit on a mass scale to be able to counter, because we're all being mass poisoned with all the sprays and things in our water. So I feel if we have some healthy tools that we can mass push back a little bit, that would be really
Yeah.
great. Can you just please tell our listeners a bit more about how they get to learn from you? Because that sounds amazing. I'd love to know more details about that. How do people sign up? How often do you put on the courses? How was it
Yeah.
delivered? And where do we sign
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. Yeah, so I created a course a couple of years ago. It's online and it's ongoing. It's not, you have to sign up and do it now. It's online, ongoing. People can join. It's on my website, aniwilliams.com, aniwilliams.com. And they just click on sound medicine. And there are lots of pages about the training, about what the sound medicine does, what the voice analysis is. And in the training, I used to do it in 3 days plus a fourth day, hands on the land sound. And so this online training is 37 modules of about 20 minutes, 30 minutes each. And they get an accumulation of much more than could happen in just a simple 4-day session. It's the accumulation of all my life's work in this, the science behind it, and how to actually do a voice analysis and case histories. It makes it really easy. A person can join at their own timing. They can take it as slow or as quickly as they want. Some people race through and they're done in a month. And I think, how did you do that? Some people take a year. It just depends on their timing. Some people take 2 weeks to go through all of the modules, but I really question how much they're really retaining with that. But the idea is they can repeat each module as many times as they want. And I do a hands-on voice analysis showing how to work with the equipment, how to work with the application. It's laid out very clearly. And then we do a monthly Zoom and go over people's results, how they're doing. And I always give a new teaching, some of the new science that is coming in all of the time with this work.
That sounds like an incredible adjunct for any practitioner. Sounds like something you can do by itself as a standalone type treatment,
Yeah.
but certainly alongside anything else that you might be doing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So is there then additional software that you purchase to be able to analyze that?
Not software. They purchase, and it's really a nominal cost of, I think, a couple of $100 total for everything or less. The little Korg piano tuner, the microphone, the cord, and they're ready to go.
Oh, wow.
And included in the course are numerous PDF files of charts, information. I recommend that they get Eileen Naumann's book for the medical astrology, because that's really a good piece that is so helpful. And of course, she brings in the homeopathy as well. So it's just a real complete, holistic sort of program.
Sounds amazing. Now, there's something else very exciting that we need to talk about, and that is your new book, Guardians of the Dragon Path. Can
Oh, yeah.
you please, I think you've got a copy of it there. Can you hold it up for our listeners listening on Rumble? Don't go to YouTube, go to Rumble, because YouTube's like given me 2 strikes now, so I'm not allowed to upload any new content. They suck. That's
Yes.
beautiful. Wow. It's an ancient temple of the Pyrenees, the way of the stars. I can't read the rest of it. And Mary, Magdalena Meridian. Amazing. Okay, so tell us all about that. What on earth is going on there? And where
It's
can we
like
get a
my
copy?
it's like my life. It's all over the map. Basically, the book is about ancient sites on both sides of the Pyrenees. I focus on just across the border to the north into southern France, but mostly in the area of Catalonia. And then I cover all of ancient Iberia, which is what we know as Spain. And I discovered alignments with the ancient sites that overlay. One of the alignments running east-west overlays the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, which was established around just over 1,000 years ago. One of the most important, and one of the most well-known initiatic paths on the planet. But what I discovered is there's an older one called the Way of the Stars that was laid out with megalithic temples, standing stones, stone circles, dolmens, which are stone houses. And these were 6,000 years ago, established across the landscape. And this was an old migration path. Then the Christian tradition came in and does basically variations of the same path. So it's about the ancient traditions, the goddess temples that I discovered that were established in Spain, temples to Isis, Artemis, Venus, Aphrodite, even an Asclepian healing temple in Spain. All of these sites are just extraordinary. So I go into what their traditions were, what they can teach us for today, how we can incorporate those traditions. I found a lot of sites dedicated to Mary Magdalene also along the Camino, the Knights Templar sites, and their importance for the people even today.
Can you say a bit more about Mary Magdalene? Because there is a homeopathic remedy that's been made from the water in the temple there. It was done last year, I think. And so I'd love to, yeah, know what other sort of things you discovered from there.
Yes. Well, actually, one of my guides to some of the Magdalene sites along the Camino is a man, Luis Pontuel, originally from Brazil, but he's living in Catalonia. And he makes flower essences from the flowers at the Magdalene sites and sanctuaries. So this is a wonderful thing you've asked. Yes. So starting in the 4th century, which is really early on, Magdalene chapels were established on the mountain at Montserrat, which we know as the center of the Great Black Madonna, not far from Barcelona. And there was another 4th century Magdalene church on the coast at a place called Empurias. So those are very early Magdalene sites. And then, of course, in the medieval era, they were all over. Maria Magdalena chapels everywhere, cathedrals, chapels, and her traditions were very important and still are. And she's having a revival now, I think, because she represents the things that have been hidden from us, the female empowerment, the wisdom traditions carried by the women throughout history. And Mary Magdalene has become a modern emblem for this empowerment that women are going through, not to become more powerful than men, but to be integrated with the male female and to really take our proper place and to be heard once again. I discovered that there are sites dedicated to Mary Magdalene that actually line up and form an equal arm cross in the landscape. It's a landscape formation marked by Magdalene churches and also megalithic sites from 6,000 years ago. So there are patterns in the landscape that I believe were created to establish stability and being in the region on both sides of the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees is a place where there's a great fault line established from the Eurasian plate and the Iberian plate pushing together and pushed up the Pyrenees range of mountains. And so that fault line activity creates certain abnormalities in energy, discontinuities that would have been perceived by ancient people as, oh, this place is a place where I can feel the connection with Great Spirit. This place is where I feel a greater clarity from forever. The ancient people recognized these unique energies and established their temples along these lines. And then later in the medieval era, the Magdalene sites and the Templar sites.
Holy moly. That's sounds like an absolutely fascinating book. It looks like a really chunky book as well, just when you were holding
It's
it up
very
before.
chunky.
Yeah.
It's very large and very thick, 400 and some pages. I can't do something small. I couldn't just do a pamphlet to summarize things. But people can find it on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all the major booksellers. And it's
Amazing.
available in the book form, which I really recommend because if you have a book in hand, I'm an old fashioned kind of girl, but I really like to have it in my hand
Okay.
and be able to really see it and make my notes. But it's also an ebook as well.
Amazing. No, a book like that, you would definitely have to have a hard copy. Although I have to say, I really like having both, like all my books, ebooks, and the actual book, because I don't like looking at a screen. And I know I could get a Kindle, but I like just holding a book and reading it. But then if I want to
Yeah.
go find something again, I can just go Control F on the ebook and find
Right.
exactly where I need to go. So, which is handy when you're
Right.
doing consultations and things. I can, oh, I know it's that book, Control F, find the word, see
That's a
which one
good
it was.
point.
Yes.
I could have done an index. I think on my next book I will, because this, when I reissue this book in the future, I'm going to add an index. So you have all the chapter headings and subheadings. So you can find basic things, but you're right, finding those specifics.
Absolutely. Holy moly, Eileen, it was so incredible chatting with you today. I'm so grateful for Eileen saying that we should connect. When she said to have a chat with you, I was like, yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a good one. But I wasn't quite prepared for all the value bombs that you were dropping today. So thank you so much. And I've promised myself I'm not going to add any more stuff to my clinic, because I have, from interviewing so many different people, you learn all these different techniques that you want to incorporate. But I am going to have to break my own rule and go and do your course, because I really want to, because I love music so much. Music is so part of my life.
Mm,
I am going to have to learn how to do this voice analysis, because I think it's going to be something beautiful and very fun and interesting to incorporate in my practice as well. So not
You
I'm super happy, but I'm also super annoyed that I have something else that I need to go learn now.
But I'm excited because you would be a super dynamo, and working with children is so exciting. I can't wait to talk to you again about the children, because in the clinics of Mexico, I taught people this system in Mexico in the 1990s, and they started using these sounds in the children's clinics for neuromuscular issues, for autism, in the dolphin therapy programs that they had. And just using the sounds alone, they were able to get more coordinated speech, communication, muscular movement. There is no limit to what can happen with this kind of work. And I'm so excited because you're a natural as a musician, a homeopath. You have everything
I
going
just don't
already.
have enough time. So I've got all that, but not enough time. But I'm
That's
also
it.
thinking neonatal ICU units, if you had that frequency music playing there for them, and orphanages, and the application really sounds endless, and yeah, just absolutely beautiful. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that we need to cover today, Ani, that we haven't, or anything that you want to mention?
I think we've covered a lot of territory. I could go on and on with case histories and miracles.
Oh, please do. What do you want to share a couple with us at least?
Oh, there's one that comes to mind that was so striking. Besides the autism cases, there was a woman in Seattle, Washington, who came to me in the 90s, and she was living in a homeless shelter for women. She had a child of a few years old, and she was desperate because she had experienced abuse from her either husband or boyfriend. And she had no money. She had no hope in anything. And I did her astrology, and her sun and moon and a few other planets were all bunched together in Aries and Taurus. So in this system, that is the tones C is in Charlie and C sharp. having to do with foundation, survival, self-empowerment, etc. Though those tones, when I analyzed her voice, were totally missing. So her sun and moon and her Mars, and it all was so clear to see that she had no confidence. She had allowed this abuse to take place and she was just downtrodden. So she started to use her tones. And within a month, she had a place to live for herself and her child. Within, I think, 6 months, she always wanted to be a singer. She got a recording contract and then performance gigs, and she was performing all over the place. And she had this talent, this gift inside of her that she was all bottled up in this inability to really express and have confidence. So that was an incredible success story for her to come from that abusive situation to shining on stage. It was just a magnificent.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love hearing those stories. And people can purchase the Sound Gaia sound medicine through your website as well. So if they
Mhm.
just want to, they don't want to
Yeah.
train in how to use this, they just want to have the actual music to listen to.
Yeah, yeah. And it comes with a 9-page file of charts as well, showing the correlations. So if there's a bladder issue, digestive issue, whatever, they can look up and look up their sun sign, see if they see any correlations. They could even use muscle testing, kinesiology to, is this the right one or is it the other one? Yeah, they can definitely start. And there are lots of videos, teaching videos, documentaries, and music videos as well on the website. So they just go to the videos section and they can see presentations to learn more about this as well.
Amazing. So best place for anyone to go is aniwilliams.com. So ANI Williams.com. And there's loads of information there on how they can get hold of you and purchase any of these beautiful things.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Any final messages you want to leave our listeners with?
Ah, sigh. It's my signature. If I start a group lecture or a concert, I just have the whole audience to just breathe deeply and just sigh into whatever they're feeling. And it just creates this beautiful release and a harmonious zone as well. So use your voices, sing for the earth, sing for the children, sing for the harmony of our beautiful humanity and our planet, because the earth needs our songs
Mm.
desperately.
Oh, that's a beautiful message. Thank you so much for your time today, Ani. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Eugenie.